All right, it's like 11 o'clock on a Monday night. What the hell am I doing streaming after already doing a stream that I do with my friend Corey Kerr and Scott Cirkland? And I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm working on comics because I'm taking the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge. Today did not go as planned. Let me explain the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge and then I'll explain a little bit of who I am. So, the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge is where you're supposed to spend a minimum of 30 minutes a day working on the progress for your own comic or graphic novel. It was started by a friend of mine named Kevin Cross. Anyhow, so what am I doing at like 11:30 at night working on comics when I have a day job? I am working on it because some unexpected scheduling conflicts happened today, and I had to do some art for a freelance client. And that art, and as far as my mind is concerned, does not count as working towards my comic. And I need to be knocking out what you see on the screen over here is my thumbnail that I did on the live stream yesterday. And that is what I need to do today. I need to do, or try to do, at least a page of roughs for my comic. So, what is my comic? Let me explain that. My comic is two stories. It is the second volume that I'm going to be working on today. And I'm going to be working on thumbnails for page page 80. So we're already at page 80 on thumbnails, which is good news because it's about 120 pages. The first 120 page graphic novel that I hand lettered, hand inked, is out. It's available through Marcosia, the publisher, and you can order it on Amazon. And if you do, that would be much appreciated because that will help me be able to feel more encouraged in making the second volume. It's a comic about faith and mental illness that I handwrite, hand letter, and hand ink, and can hand to you now through Amazon. I point people to Amazon. It's available at multiple bookstores. So if you don't live in the US, I recommend just go to my website, joshuakemble.com, and that'll link you to in the store section to all sorts of places. You can also just go to Marcosia's website and look up two stories, and they have a whole variety of places you can order it from. But right now I'm trying to push sales to that. So plugs out of the way, all of that out of the way. It's kind of late for a start, so I'm going to just crack into it and then we'll talk. If you end up watching this as it's going live, let me know. And hop in on the chats and I'll comment on what you say. I'm imagining since it's like a Monday night at like 11 approaching midnight, I'm guessing most folks won't be up, but I'm still going to try to do the stream every time I'm working. Yes, Frank is joining me. Frank in the chats, who bounced over from my other live stream with Corey Kerr, 48-hour art check. How's it going, Frank? I hope you are down to work on some comics with me. Okay, so yesterday I got like a new page going. So I'll show you in the script. The part that is highlight right here, I need to get this next chunk done, this next section. So now I'm going to get into thumbnailing and see how it goes. How you doing, Frank? I hope you're doing good. Oh, I'm going to crack open one of these. It's a Golden Road Mango Cart IPA because I'm off work and having to do some OT, so might as well enjoy the time. That is good. This is local. I think, well, not super local, but I think they're located in like Santa Monica or somewhere San Fernando area. I'll have to look on the packaging. I know a couple people I work with live by the actual brewery. So anyhow. Okay, let's get into it. Nice. Frank says he's doing some penciling on a mini comic. That is the way to do it, dude. That's what we're all hoping to do tonight is some art. Okay, So I'm going to close this out. I don't know why. I got to change my my presets so that it's not always showing a grid like the second I open my Photoshop. So basically what I'm working on is thumbnailing and working out the sequences of how I want my comic to go. So, and did I say I was working on page 80? Because I conveniently already changed the title of this page so that what I do when I'm working on thumbnails is I copy, especially when I'm doing them digitally, right? If I'm doing them in a sketchbook, I just turn a page. But if I'm doing them digitally, I copy the digital file and then just name it the next page's name so that I don't have to like remake the wheel when it comes to like sizing and grids and stuff like that. But what I then do is take like the previous page's artwork, which you just saw me do, and I cut and paste each section so they're easy to kind of pull and refer to. All right. So here we go. Let's get into it. Frank, what do you do when you're penciling? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you watch streams? Is there any music that you like to listen to that kind of gets you in the zone when you're working? For me, if I'm live streaming, obviously I'm not going to listen to music, except the sweet sound of folding paper, which you guys probably just heard. But yeah, usually my go-to is like podcasts or bands or something like that to get in the zone. While live streaming, I pretty much am going to be listening to myself and the chats. But I'm always curious, like what people find helps them get creative. All right. For me, another thing that I really like to work to, like if I'm working to music, is hip hop. There's something about like underground hip hop that just gets me in the zone for working. I don't know what it is. All right. So here we go. After getting off the phone, so I'm in the sequence of the story. Let's see where I'm at. Okay. So I'm at this part in the story where I've just had a phone call with my brother. And, Corey is hopping on. Look at this. A guest star, Corey Kerr. And
I'm only going to be here for a few
platforms. All right. Here we go. And let me just reframe this guy. I actually have this called photo pajamas. I don't know what made me want to call it photo pajamas, but I have a preset on here called photo pajamas.
That makes sense. You probably named that at 4 a.m.
It might have happened. Okay, that's not it. It's not showing me Photoshop as an option. So I think photo pajamas might be a failure here. I'm going to get rid of photo pajamas. And then I'm going to try to get my display going. Let's see. How you doing, Corey?
Fine. I'm gonna hit the sack soon though. My back is me.
Dude, understandably. I was just saying at the top, like it's like I would actually not be streaming were I not committed to actually getting this second book done. But there's this magical thing that deadlines give you.
Yeah.
Even if they're self deadlines. I think we've talked about that before, right?
Oh yeah. I think we've talked about everything before.
That's true. We have nothing left to learn. We have learned it all.
Did you see my rant on that critic?
I didn't. I kind of perused it, so now I'm curious. Tell me about that rant on that.
So New York Times art critic who got on and said that criticism takes more work than art.
Oh, that's not what I wanted.
And so he just got torn to shreds. and then tried to walk it back by saying, let me read his original quote. I'll pull this up. This was, let's see here. Also, did you see that the office of the former president?
That I did not.
Oh, yeah, the office of a former president is a new office that was just started in Florida. There are 4 living former presidents, but only one of them started it. All right, so I'll just put this up on the screen. So this guy, he says, a good critic always puts more into the writing about artwork than the artist put into making it. The artist only creates. The critic must plumb that creation and also write creatively enough to deliver the full volume of the art while also creating a thing of beauty and clarity himself.
Okay, wait. Corey, you've Twitter ranted on this, right? But I think it might be beneficial if we go line by line.
Okay.
And really break the idiocy of this down, because
but then people started calling him out on it. And so he says, I knew this would mean being way ratioed. I don't say it as a provocateur, bullcrap. Read Wilde, argue with him. Like I said, a good critic does create. We don't surpass the work, but he did say more. We create a thing itself is adjacent to another thing in itself. That's all. But like his initial tweet, the first sentence, a good critic always puts more into writing about artwork than the artist puts into making it. That's the first sentence. And he never walks that back.
The thing that's baffling about that is like, I feel like this might be a scenario of somebody like misspeaking for sure. Because here's the thing, he probably meant more like intellectual breakdown. I mean, like there are ways, even that would be offensive.
I want to give him
the artist.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt,
but I'm trying to figure out what he's trying to say, because if he's trying to say his work is hard.
No, I read a ton of his reports, and it's like any normal person who doesn't think that they're better than other people, would get 1 or 2 of those replies. You and I have both had this happen to us. You say or do something, and you mean it one way, and somebody goes, that is not coming off the way that you mean it. And then you look at it again and you go, oh, dude, you're right.
Yeah,
I was wrong. He doesn't do that at all. He starts doing this. He starts using the word obviously with people. And he starts calling people silly.
This cracks me up because, okay, so my wife and I used to have this plot for a kid's book, and it never came to fruition, but it was like a joking plot. Like we came up with it when we were like dating, and we went to Catalina or something. We were sitting around and just talking about having these different animals characters where they have, you know, like an alliterative name. So like obvious otter, and like, you know, I don't know. There were a bunch of them that we came up with, but obvious otter was like this character that we thought would just show up and just go, well, obviously, and then just disappear. I just always thought that would be funny to just have a character that's all they say is just, you know, they show up and go, well, obviously.
Yeah.
But partially because it's super pretentious.
Yeah. But the thing that I love about this is he is literally touting his ability to craft words as his main source of value, and he fails miserably at crafting those words, and then doesn't recognize that he said something stupid. All day today, he was arguing with every single person that replied to this and calling them silly. And at one point in time, and I screen capped this one too. Do I have to say it again? A good critic does create. We do not surpass a work, except for he says that they always do more. We just create a thing adjacent to another thing in itself. We just create too. Unknot your panties. Gendered insult, by the way. I'll throw that out there for this liberal elite. No one said creating something is easy. So literal. You know I love you, artists. And it's like, yeah, you're sure acting like it. Anyway, so he just basically spent the rest of the day trying to gaslight everyone. Then he sort of apologized one time for using the word just, which he doesn't use. He said, I never should have used the word just. I didn't mean that they just create. That was a bad use of word. And I'm like, it doesn't say that. It says only create. How dumb
well,
are
here's the problem is he's a critic who doesn't read.
you? It's like, this is a huge problem for somebody in your profession, you know? Anyway, yeah, I did it. I did a whole.
I think the main issue is just saying always. You're right. That's a good point. Always and more are like the big ones. Sure. Like if I say like Corey is a great artist and I really admire him. He's a good friend of mine, but I always put in more work.
Right.
Like that instantly is insulting. Like there's no way to not see that as insulting.
Anyway,
that's hilarious, dude.
So that cracked me up. I loved it. And I was just like, oh man. So then I made this tweet and I put a bunch of stuff out there and I don't know. Yeah, but I was just like, oh, that's amazing. So
that is
there's Mr. Saltz. I tried to be really respectful as I pointed out how he was I said I'll agree that critics create something adjacent to the artwork itself, but it's not what Mr. Saltz originally said.
Yeah.
Clarify using the words obviously and silly whilst claiming that you said something completely different than what you said is gaslighting.
Yeah. I mean, that's the definition of gaslighting. Where you're just like, I didn't say that. And it's like, I can scroll up. This is like, it's on Twitter. Like I can scroll up.
Well, and I took a screenshot of it thinking that he would realize that he is contradicting something that is so easily proven.
Frank pointed out a good one. Josh made a great graphic novel, but I always make more comics. That's totally true.
And the thing that's funny is
you really want to like crush somebody's soul.
He didn't even do that. He didn't even say a compliment. He just started with an insult and then didn't walk away from it.
Yeah.
It's not like he said, artists work hard, but no, he just said a good critic always does more than the artist.
Here's a lesson in framing, I think, for people. Like, first off, if you err, like, don't double down. Every time you double down when you err, and I've done it, everyone has. Your instant feeling when you get criticized, like, as a human being, you go into fight or flight, right? You default to attack mode. You either default to that or running mode. And if you're like a person like me, I'm always going to attack. I don't do the runaway thing. And so it's like, but to catch yourself, to grow the ability to catch yourself when you err and stop that part of you that wants to get all defensive and be like, but there's me. And just go, you know what? You're right. That was stupid.
I made a mistake.
Every time you double down on a mistake, at least in my opinion, and it's hard to say this anymore because we did have, and I've told people multiple times, this podcast does get political. Or not podcast, but stream. So I have no problem saying this. We did have a president in office who doubled down all the time and barely saw any repercussions for it. So maybe this is taken with a grain of salt, but in general, in life, I've noticed like every time you double down on an error and backing it up, you literally are just putting it's like, here's your you mess up, you're close to a coffin, right? You double down. Okay, now you're pushed in the coffin. And then every time you double down, you're literally just burying yourself like under, you might as well be shoveling the sand on your own, coffin. It's so much easier as a human being to empathize with someone who makes a mistake, at least for me, because we've all made mistakes. So if somebody goes, you know what, like, that was a dumb thing to say. I said a dumb thing. Like, most people are like, at least I think most people have had moments of saying something dumb. And so they're like way more willing to forgive than just like blatantly like bold-faced like trying to pretend you didn't say it. I don't know. It's one of my pet peeves. And honestly, it's a good reminder, I think, for me and for people out there who you know are human and are tempted to double down, to like cool down and like allow yourself to be wrong. You know, like
Just don't do that. Just be wrong. That's the thing, is there's nothing wrong with being wrong. You can be wrong and survive that. You can survive being wrong.
yeah.
It's not a life-threatening situation.
And it's frightening and it's vulnerable, but you know, like life is about vulnerability, and that's like manly vulnerability, you know, just to like pull the kind of trope that guy was pulling.
I mean, unabashedly gaslighting. And everybody, he replied to everybody except the people that pointed out word for word, like, you used this word. You can't walk that back. You used these two words in a phrase that means something. Everyone else, he was like, oh, silly, I didn't mean that. Well, obviously this, blah, 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 you know, and you're reading into things that aren't there. And it's like, except he ignored everybody who pointed out the literal words that you wrote say something very specific. Anyway, I've got an 8 o'clock class, so I have to go to bed. But
that's hilarious. Well, thanks for cruising by, man. That kind of made my night. That was a very fun thing.
Okay, see you later.
All right, switching back to the other format. Boom, right? That's pretty cool. So Corey came in. I think that's a really rife topic of just like, don't double down on errors, you know? So now I can try to focus on this this panel. So where I was at on this comic, I had just finished a sequence where I was talking to my brother on a phone, and now it's going to transition from that. So yeah, let's see. We called yeah, Frank, totally, right? Like, just admit your mistakes. It's okay, you know? And you know, to be fair, I have had moments in my life where I've been really hesitant to like admit a mistake, and I'm just saying from experience, it's so much better to just be like, yeah, I screwed up. You know, like it's just people tend to be surprisingly way more forgiving. I have no idea who that critic was that Corey was talking about, but yeah, that was hilarious. Let's see here. So I just need a few moments to write this out, and then I'll get back in the jam of talking about stuff. Once I kind of figure out what I want to do with this sentence. So, just to bring back something I mentioned the other day on the last stream. So you'll notice I like skipped this spot, right? Even though it's like the A could fit there, right? But if I put the A there, that leaves this frame, like the word detective, like there as like an orphan. You don't want that. So that just visually is really awkward, and it makes sentences really hard for people to read. So it's weird, but it's like you're literally thinking about stuff like that when you're constructing, especially thumbnails, because it's very loose. Everything can move around. Nothing's set in stone. To like, you know, when it comes to like me actually hand lettering these and inking them like legit, like the last thing I want to do is have like this foundation that has like a bad position for the type, so it's hard to read, you know. Okay, so let's see here. And I'm sure if somebody looks like carefully enough at 2 stories and finds like some orphans, let me know. I'll feel bad. Orphaned type, just sitting there all alone. Okay. So let's see. Police department asked to speak with a detective. So now I need to figure out how I want to frame this. I think okay. These are tough sequences. It's funny, I've written this script, but it's very hard when you're dealing with the script where there's a lot of dialogue and not a lot of action. So I'm trying to think of ways to introduce some action because I've already gone through a whole phone conversation where there's not a ton of action. Um, and so I'm kind of curious. There's also the possibility of doing like a non-literal view, but I'm trying to think like if that would be fitting for this because I do want this story and then the story in Long Beach that I'm working on for the second book because they're so brutal. I kind of want them to be very like this happened and be very literal and kind of show and a lot very literally instead of telling. But I'm debating and I'm thinking that I'm going to start and just see where that goes. But I'm actually, ooh, that might work. So maybe if I have like a head here, kind of, okay. And then this is like, you know, calling, but it's calling on it's calling on like an old school cell phone because the time this takes place in is a time where flip phones were used. There's usually 3 buttons. Okay. This is just trying to kind of block in an idea. Okay. I have this hand holding it. I'm wondering if this will work, and part of why I'm being so loose with it is just to figure out, like, does this work? Okay. So here's my weird idea. I don't know if I framed that properly, but I think I can. Take advantage of it being digital and just kind of move that down. Ooh, that might actually work. Okay. So then I got this. Probably going to need a connection to this arm. Oh my goodness. Connection to this arm here. Yep. And then my thought is to kind of frame my fiance here. At the time, my fiance, now wife. So my comic's an autobiographical story for anybody who doesn't know, who might be chiming in. And the characters in it are actually, the main characters are my wife and myself when we were engaged and kind of went through some pretty weird, traumatic mental health and physical health issues prior to finding our faith or being found in our faith. So she is a pretty key character here. That wouldn't make sense for her to be facing me because we're still in a room So I need to actually kind of think more like, maybe she's turning. Yeah, that actually makes a little more sense. But she's not wearing a short sleeve. She's wearing a Seattle sweatshirt, which is a rad Seattle sweatshirt. There's this really cool Seattle sweatshirt I got years ago. Avoid tangents there. So a tangent would be like a point like this, where you have 2 points like meeting that shouldn't meet. So that's something you want to avoid, like where it visually becomes kind of awkward to have a tangent like that. So I want to make sure I have it like obviously stepped, so you wouldn't just kind of make that connection. Okay, so I know this is like not the most exciting drawing in the planet. Okay, so then there's a door frame. Gonna have to move my character back a little bit, but at least this can give me an idea of like how I'm gonna position the apartment that this takes place in. I think there's a drawing table here. One of those old school drafting tables, which I still have, like a very old school drafting table, which you guys will probably see more of when it comes to like inking these things. Okay, so here we go. Gonna kind of work this out. Sorry, I had to like verbally kind of work out that problem so that I didn't have orphaned type, and I'm avoiding tangents as much as possible. I'm just kind of keeping in mind some basic stuff, you know. So yeah, so this is the part where I can kind of talk more. So my hope, like the last stream went like 2 hours that I did for this, because these things take like hours to do. My hope is not to be doing this till like 2 in the morning. So this may actually be one of those nights where my progress may not actually get a full page penciled out, and that's partially because like when you're doing art and stuff, like stuff comes up, and there was kind of a unexpected thing that happened today that literally like took about 6 hours out of my day. And so my planning went out the window. And one thing I will say about planning going out the window is that's a pretty normal thing for art. Like life does not always abide the way we expect it to. And so being able to adjust and hopefully still make progress, and a lot of the times like not let that be an excuse to not do whatever the positive thing is, whether that's working out or whatever it is, can be really helpful. And then sometimes it's not about making excuses. Sometimes it's just literally like, yeah, so stuff came up and plans have to change, and that's okay too. So but yeah, today was definitely one of those days where it was a little frustrating. Not a big deal. I'm a very fortunate person. But there was a little bit of a deviation from what I was planning on. So anyhow, here's my super noodly rough business here. I am really like funking the perspective here. Okay, let's try that. A little bit better. So these thumbnails are supposed to be tighter, but you know, how tight do I need them to be? I am glad though. So I had this other job I had to do for a client, and I did manage to get that wrapped up while doing the 48-hour art check, and that was good news, because I don't take client work a ton anymore. And keep in mind that's a first round. With illustration, you always kind of expect a couple revisions, maybe minor revisions, um, when you do art, because I mean, it's rare to just kind of get it 100%. The client I'm working for, actually, it's less rare. Like, she actually tends to have really modest revisions, if any. But part of why I don't usually take on a lot of client work is because it pulls away time from my comics. And this client, though, is cool. So there's certain clients I really like working with, and I kind of, when they ask, I will do, because I appreciate the income, and I also just appreciate them, as people. Let's see here. So now I am really, see, that's a tangent too. So I need to pull this over here. So close. Try to avoid that tangent. So one of the things that I have been thinking about lately is sort of trying to enjoy things we do, like, as artists, because sometimes we get so stuck in the thick of like project oriented thinking that we'll like forget to kind of enjoy our successes sometimes. So, like, that is something I am trying to work on a bit, in my own life, because like it's like this comic, it took me years to complete, like, this thing. And I will already kind of move past that victory, and kind of instantly start thinking about the next project, and not allow myself to enjoy the fact that I had a success. And I see that with friends a lot too, where it's like they'll work on a crazy animation, and uh, or like a crazy kids book or art book or something. And like the second they accomplish it, it's like kind of on to the next thing. And that's a good thing for like productivity. But it can be pretty important when you're in the thick of these things to remember your victories, because they're few and far between. And when you have them, I think you kind of have to allow yourself to celebrate a bit. I don't know. So that's a thought. That's just something I've been thinking about. Um, Frank, what comic are you penciling? Which mini comic is that? Your Captain Courage mini? Kind of curious. I am finding. One sec. Finding a lot of enjoyment in sort of even doing this stream, because one thing that's nice about it is it can be a motivator for me to uh, hit the mark, like to actually get this thing done. Um, Today may be one of those days where I allow myself a break from doing this, but like, in the sense of like, I might uh, only get a portion of the page done, but but it still is a good motivation, because I'm going to try to get as much done as I can, um, because it's an art cast, and that would be helpful. So right now I'm adding tones to the page, just to like get the sense of lighting for when I get to the final. I like to have an idea of like how I'm gonna have page kind of laid out and lit. Do want this to be sort of a primary focus. There we go. Want this to be darker. Okay, cool. Now we're like 40 minutes in. Let's get on to the next panel. Next panel. Two seconds. Gotta grab something. I do need to get to this next real quick. Be right back. Okay, so something that has been on my mind recently is there's a lot going on with COVID recently, where a lot of people are coming down with it, and closer to where I live, in the community I live. But the one thing that has not been a shock during this whole thing is quite a few of the people I know who've come down with it are people who didn't believe in it. And it's kind of this sad irony. Like, it's not something I take pleasure in, but it's definitely like this moment of like when someone completely denies the existence of a threat that's out there and present and then gets hit with it. It's like not super shocking. Like, and I hope that doesn't sound like insensitive or anything, but it's been interesting because I have noticed that the latest one that I know was like talking very publicly about, like that after November, like it would just disappear. Like they thought the whole thing was just chalked up to like prop up the other political party or whatever. And it was just fascinating because it's like they probably proceeded through their day like not taking any precautions, not washing their hands, not wearing masks, that kind of stuff. And then they got COVID. So, which creates like all sorts of problems for family and friends and people around them and stuff. It's been an interesting thing. It's just been weird and kind of fascinating watching some of the stuff that's happened this year in like real time, where I don't know, maybe that's a strange thought, but it's just like it's just very surreal year with a lot of weird things happening. Okay, now I have to do this type, so okay, put a pin in that thought. Okay, this is the next panel. Put me on hold. So this continues as a sentence, but I kind of feel like if I'm trying to make somebody feel tension, like, so at this point in a story, main character has been held hostage in a neighbor's apartment, escaped it, talked to the police. Police aren't going to do anything. Talks to his brother, who's a cop. The cop says, like, call the police, talk to a detective. Like, that wasn't legal what had just happened, and those cops didn't know what they were doing. So now I'm getting this point in the story where it's like, okay, so finally after that conversation, call the cops and then they put you on hold. So when I'm drafting these things out, like when I'm thumbnailing, I'm also trying to think like, what does the reader think? And instantly when I'm thinking, put me on hold, do I want to continue that sentence or take advantage of the fact that by pausing, I'm actually making the reader have to stay on hold. So this needs to be kind of a dead panel. And I am thinking might be good if it's just the phone itself. But what happens when you're on hold? Anybody have any ideas? Let's see. Let's think about it. What happens when somebody puts you on hold? That should not have been drawn. So another little tip that I break sometimes is just to draw through items. So if you're drawing an object like a phone or something like that, like a lot of people when they're new to art, and keep in mind these are thumbnails, these are crappy roughs that are meant to be loose and like I'm not referencing anything when I'm drawing these. I'm just kind of doodling it to like figure out my placement and my beats, but still, let's say you're drawing like in this case like a hand over a phone. The temptation is when you get to the part where the phone is connecting to the hand would be to draw the hand part, like to draw it like here. But if you do that, you end up making like a line in the wrong spot like that, as opposed to like actually drawing around the object. So like this, where it's going to be a little more convincingly in a hand, because now I'm drawing through an object as opposed to like drawing around it. And drawing through allows you to actually like seat something a little better. Now it's a little annoying to clean up, but my point is like it just makes more convincing illustrations. And one key point, you can see this with new artists a lot, like a telltale sign they didn't draw through the object is like, real quick, I'll just draw it up here. So it's like if somebody's drawing a character wearing a hat or something, and they'll draw the hat, but suddenly like the figure's head is like not aligning with the hat. Like the head somehow, like if I take this hat off, suddenly the head somehow like is shaped like this. Anyhow, so a quick way around that kind of mistake is to draw through it. So you basically, in that case, I'm just gonna super quickly draw like a weird face. But if I wanted to draw a hat on this dude, I'd just draw his head, and then you draw the hat around the head, right? So then it's like, okay. Then you can kind of create a more convincing hat, and suddenly the person's head, like you can imagine a skull in there because you've drawn it around there. Totally nerdy little tip, but if you're new to this thing, watch out for that. Like not drawing through objects can be a nightmare. Okay. Speaking of, spending too long on roughs can be a nightmare. But we're getting there. Okay. Oh, I forgot the fun part. So I was asking this like mystery question, like what happens when you're on hold? And what happens when you're on hold on a phone is you hear music. I usually don't like using music notes too much, but in this case, I think that actually makes sense because it's like the annoying on hold music. Now let's clean up these hands a little bit. Let's see, totally did little sausage fingers. These are thumbnails. That's another thing you want to avoid in art is sausage fingers. There's a tip with that too, to avoid sausage fingers. When you're drawing fingers, you don't actually want to draw the shape. You want to start with a line and then build out from there, which I kind of ignored. There's also a tangent right here. I'm going to fix. This is a huge phone. Once again, thumbnails. Okay. So there we go. 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom. Okay. Work this out a little better, and then I'm going to have a little connector here. And maybe it'll say like 9. There'll be some kind of type here. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is create, oh, there's a little trick I was going to do because these are thumbnails. So yeah, it's like one thing that's fun about thumbnails is they're very loose and kind of silly. So you don't have to get as in depth with this. Like a thumbnail could literally be like as detailed as like the little doodle I was doing to show like the placement of heads and how it's important to like draw through an object as opposed to draw around it. No, this will be more looking down at the floor. There we go. There would be like a semblance of ground somewhere, but I'm thinking this is over the floor. Ah, there we go. Trying to think of solutions here. This is half of why it's great to do thumbnails, because you work all this stuff out before it's like something you're completely married to on the final product. And I hope that kind of gives a sense. So then again, setting up the lighting. In this case, I'm really going to want to target and focus and highlight this phone over like a dark background. We want the phone to have like some lighting. Okay, so anyhow, exciting times. Call for exciting art. Look at that. So thrilling. It's funny because like the last few of these, I've been a little more on my A game when I start because I'm starting a little bit earlier, like 2 hours earlier. But today was a twist. Okay. So once again, I'm going to just kind of try to get another panel done. So like I've mentioned this on the last one too. I just always try to psych myself out with little goals and then see where it goes. So I might tonight, since it's about midnight, and I don't think I have like another 2 hour stream within me. So I think I might just kind of see how this goes till maybe like 1. I think 1 would be about as late as I want to go with this. And then if I get to 1 and I'm able to get a little more in, that's cool. But we'll see how that goes. So now this is an interesting thing. So, but when the detective came in, He herded me out and booked us for an appointment. Got it. Okay. An appointment. The following morning. Okay, here is where I kind of want to do okay, so here I'm kind of thinking I need to grab thinking this might actually be a good way to add a little bit of interest here. So yep, and I think that might be the way to do it. I'm trying to see what the police department building HB looks like. It's been a while. Okay, I need to do a little more research. But I am thinking like it would be ideal in this situation because it's been so much talking heads and so many like scenes that are cutting back and forth with the phones to have it cut to the HB police department, which I actually need to look up. So where is it? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. It's kind of shockingly hard to find. And I used to, well, I mean, clearly we used to live in Huntington, but it's hard to find. Okay, there we go. Maybe it's in About Us. Directions. There we go. Yes. Okay. This actually makes sense. Okay, I finally found it. So Yorktown in Maine. Sorry, I know this is like really fun streaming stuff, like watching me while I'm searching the internet for a police station. Here we go. That should be. That's it. Ooh, that's cool. Okay, I like that. Okay, I'm gonna pull this out so that I can kind of pay a little more attention to the stream. But I'm basically just gonna. That's really good. Okay. Okay. That is really, really good news. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at what that police department station looks like. And again, I just need to do like a really quick thumbnail, but I think like actually having the department here would be good. And there's usually palm trees. Tree here. We'll have just kind of this crazy shape thing. Have this. Yes. Okay. So one of the things that I'm trying to do in the sequence is like kind of change it up so it's not just all like the same point of view. Like I do feel like comics need to change up occasionally, just to keep things interesting, to keep things kind of working, you know. So yeah, so like any opportunity to kind of shift it or the shift the viewpoint, especially during like long conversation sequences, it's a good thing to do. So here I'm going to draw this police station, and I'm going to think like avoid tangents again. Of course, it's this like weird structure, but that's not undrawable. And then it's got this levels to it. It's gonna have like a couple of these. So, yeah, I am getting close to this far in, and then I think I might, like I said, I want to wrap this around 1. I also realize like I'm not being as kind of on point or as entertaining as I might be on a regular day, just because of the fact that I, started late. I do kind of wonder um, what kind of motivates us. Like for me, in this case, it's like a story I think is really important to tell, and that keeps me motivated. There's also just the personal challenge of it, where I'm like, I enjoy having comics out in the world, and there is a bit of pride to that too, where it's like it's a nice feeling to have this stuff out. So, but there is also just some fun to overcoming like a personal challenge. And so like even tonight, where I'm like, I managed to knock out some freelance work for a client, and now I am feeling pretty good about the amount of thumbnails I'm going to be able to get done. All right. Cool. So I'm just doing this really quick, rough view of a city. Once again, I will get into more detail and stuff in it when I get to other stuff. All right, there we go. Boom. Love it. So let me Definitely want to put this here. Ooh, did I do that? Okay, refs. Here it is. Okay. And I could call it, but I think I have another in me. So I think I'm going to do at least one more thumbnail. It's like that milestones thing where I'm going to see how far I can get. When the detective came on, ooh, I missed a bunch of this sentence. So let's see how this goes. The beauty of roughs. Beauty of digital roughs. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to write the rest of the sentence that I missed. I thought I had finished this thumbnail, but it just kind of comes in. Hey, dude, I'm joined by Crimson Owl Comics. Yeah, which is pretty badass. So how's it going, dude? How are you doing? It is late and I'm working on comics. Are you working on comics too? Let's see here. So in the meantime, okay. Following morning to takedown. Okay. Sorry, just kind of working out this this business. It's okay. So let's do to take down what happened and file a report. So today, I mentioned yesterday, like my son had a loose tooth, and then it like right at dinner, he was. It's like the cliche thing because they always say like kids lose their teeth on an apple, but uh, so that totally happened. He lost. I think it's his second tooth that he's lost. And so we got to talk him through it and talk about the tooth fairy and stuff. So this morning he woke up to some cash flow, and then it was pretty fun because he was all excited. He got to buy like a Minecraft toy with his tooth fairy money, and it's one of the Minecraft characters. It's not like Steve or Alex. My son's way into Minecraft, so I know those characters already. There's like a couple extra characters. It was some extra character, but he was really stoked about it, and that was really fun to see. There's something really cool about like 7 years old when kids are just like super imaginative, and it's like they haven't been crushed yet by the world, so they still have like really active imaginations and play like with this crazy cool imagination in what they do and stuff, and it's just fun to see. But I was saying yesterday too, like I still think it's kind of amazing that we get used to the idea that there was like, I think we even forget there was this era in time where like every single tooth you had like was going to come out and get replaced by another tooth. It's just a weird, creepy thing we've all gotten used to. But yeah. Oh, nice. Starting the day job in 15 minutes and wanted to stop by and show support. Well, I appreciate the support and I hope you have a good day at the day job. Yeah, I got a good 7 hours till I have to start the day job. But we'll see how it goes, That's cool though. That's cool that you watch streams before work. That's a good way to kind of right yourself and get your mind in a cool space before kind of going through the workday. Let's see here. Okay, now it's going to zoom in. See, I'm trying to think of ways to make this more interesting. So I think it's going to zoom in. Technically, it's being told from the perspective. It's first person, so it's being told from my perspective, but you can kind of shift that a little bit in first person. So I'm not doing full first person omniscience, but there's definitely some wiggle room in like being able to like leave the room when conversations are potentially becoming massive talking head sequences. It's pretty cool though. I hope you have a good day at work. I think this might be the last one for the night, this panel. So we'll see. It's going to be, let's see here. Okay. And this part in the story is really interesting because, like all of this actually happened, but it's also really fascinating how, depending on the police officer you spoke to, like you would get a different response. And I was just thought that was kind of sad for like people who are going through like really hard situations, like on the daily, not just like a weird occurrence. How like the way when you speak to a detective, that detective treats you as opposed to just an officer, it's just shocking. that was like such a normal thing. Cool, dude. Yeah, join on Friday, man. Yeah, I appreciate anybody stopping by anytime. So it's a pretty chill stream where it's just kind of like a stream of consciousness and just kind of hanging out. So let's see here. But I always found that really weird in this part in the story where, we had these officers who just kind of brushed off what happened as nothing. And then the second we got a hold of the detective, they were like, oh, yeah, that was like a big problem. It's just, I don't know, it's interesting, the difference. Maybe it's just like the level of jaded people get at the job. I don't know. All right. As we creep closer, all right, man, have a good night. We're creeping closer to like 1 a.m. on my end. Yeah, I guess that's true. It'll be day shortly for me. Yeah, be safe, man. Have a good one. Okay, and they would investigate, but as we creep closer to 1 o'clock. I wonder if I might just need to take a quick break and then come back and then I can finish off and maybe get more done. Or if I should call it. So I think I might just do the break and then get more done. This is like the pretty typical battle that people go through. Okay. So now this is going to be like that. I was joking the other day about so when I was a kid, I always thought it was really, well, not a really little kid, but like middle school. Um, I read a lot of Spawn comics. Like this is when I was like still really heavy into superhero comics. And McFarlane had this thing. He used to do it in Spider-Man too. And it just seemed so cool at the time, where he would like start on like the eye of like just this abstract shape, and then it would kind of zoom out, and then it would be like a honeycomb shape, and you're like, huh, what's this? And it would zoom out, and um, finally you see it's like this weird alien eye, and you're like, holy crap. And then it zooms out again, and then you're like, wait, that's not an alien eye, that's like a fly eye. And then it zooms out, and it's like fly. Oh, the fly's like on a donut. And then it zooms out, and it's like, oh, the donut's next to coffee, and just constant zooming out as like a framing device, starting with like a really unusual point in the picture frame to kind of focus on. I thought that was so cool as a kid. I still think it's kind of rad, but it's less like massively impressive as it was like when I was a kid. Although McFarlane's still like really, really solid dude, like solid artist. Um, but anyhow, I'm doing a bit of that. It's funny, I was kind of teasing that yesterday, and then I'm doing the zoom out trope too. Not gonna zoom in. It might be funny though. Maybe I should like zoom in, because eventually what I'm going to do here is zoom in on the police office, which I'm trying to find my reference image off screen here. Just so I'm kind of making sure. Yeah, okay. What does that say on it? Just trying to see what the side of the building says. Ah, there it is. So, it would be funny if I really did the technique and like, because right now they're talking to a police officer over the phone who's in one of these offices. But it would be funny if I like pulled a reverse McFarlane, and had it like zoom in um, onto the officer, and then you think it's like pulled in, and then it zooms in on like a hair on the head of the officer, and then the molecules in the hair, and you're like, wait, what? This is a phone conversation. Why is it? Why is it like eternally zooming in? Maybe that's what I call this stream, the eternal zoom in. But yeah, so and then this is, I think the police station is actually at the Civic Center. Yep. Okay. Kind of a zoomed in shot, but yep. So anyhow, I think that would be pretty fascinating. I don't know. At some point in the story, maybe I can get away with that, like a kind of incongruous zoom in where it's like, why would you focus on that? instead of like the one where it starts obscure, because that makes a little more sense from a framing standpoint, right? Where you have like, like an object where you're like, what's that? And then as it zooms out, it reveals itself. So there's like this big aha moment. But it might be funny to have a just like why moment where it so these dudes in detectives, right? They're going to be using handheld phones. So that's definitely going to be a thing. I have like all right. So gonna have that. It would be like a desk or something. Some office lights. Okay. Regardless, this is just a framing device. Okay. And then we're getting closer. All right. That is the ugliest rough I have made in years. I'm joking. I've made worse. Still think it'll work though. This should have a little more shadow. Too much shadow. Tighten it up a little bit. Okay, so I think I'm feeling a second wind from this accomplishment of getting 4 done. So I'm thinking I might push it a little bit and see how far I can go on this page before I need to absolutely crash and have energy tomorrow when I work. So if you are here watching or after the fact watching, cool. Let me know what you think in the comments section about the eternal zoom. Okay, investigate, and now that's going to be continued. All right, I will be right back to complete a little bit more of this page. If I can get one more panel done, I'm at like the halfway point. I think that might be acceptable. So let's see how that goes. All right, be right back. All right, ladies and gents, right back to it. Round maybe one more panel. How many times throughout the years have I caught myself saying that? So I'm doing the zoom in on this police station just to kind of find out what can happen. And then I might call it a night. But I think the content at the beginning of this might have been more entertaining. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. What to talk about? I think that I need to focus on the the type real quick, and then I'll get back to it. So in the meantime, got to block in that type, the whole type, because if you don't, you're going to allot not enough space. The other reason you want to block in your full type on your thumbnails is that what you want in graphic design when you're designing a book or anything like that is consistently sized typefaces. And if you're reading a comic and like the typefaces, especially like the header type or the dialogue type, like seems to enlarge and shrink like just to fit panels, it really messes up the reading experience and it kind of looks slapped together. So one trick to that is block in your type at the rough stage, and then you won't have that issue. And how do I know that? I learned the wrong hard way by doing it the wrong way first. So we were to be safe. So I think I mentioned yesterday hold on a sec. Okay, so I think that yesterday I mentioned that I also play guitar, and I had like a hand injury, like a couple disconcerting because I couldn't use my left hand very well. I had to like get this brace. I had to get like a cortisone shot that they pumped right in there because the pain was so extreme, and I could barely like use my thumb. And because I also play music, like that was really kind of sad because I wasn't able to. I had just finished like a solo album that I call the Bottle of Better Than, that you can actually get on most music platforms and stores, and it was just self-titled. And I also play in a band when there's not like a crazy COVID crisis. I shouldn't get into the face yet. I need to block out this character. So anyhow, I just was like really excited because the other day I came up with like a riff that feels like the beginning of a song. I haven't been able to touch my guitar since because I just haven't had time. And you have to kind of prioritize like what are your creative projects going to be? Are you going to be putting out like a graphic novel and an album, and then have the graphic novel come out later because of the time you spent on that album? Or are you going to like just somehow like make more time, like in a day where you just literally there's no time to push? Anyhow, point being, like that's always a juggle with like music versus art. But the one thing I will say that was nice about that is I can at least play my guitar for a short period of time now, and that's kind of awesome. So I think that might work out. I do remember this dude was like, he had kind of big ears, and he was sort of like had like almost like Superman type, like definitely looked like a detective out of a movie. I think I'm wrong in that. I think he just was might have been badged, but I feel like he was just wearing like a regular kind of like plain clothes. And probably long sleeves, not short. Okay. And here, even though I'm not having him say dialogue, I might still kind of bulk that out in a second. part of why I'm zooming in and kind of creating this different frame also to break is because of the tension of the next line. It's not even tension, it's more like tension before, well, it's almost like a joke. Even though it's a true story, it's like there's a little bit of comedic timing in this next part that I want to work out. So I'm gonna have that, like he's doing kind of this grippy thing with his hand. All right, cool. We'll work that out. I mentioned before he's on a rotary phone. I keep watching that and putting him back on his cell phone just because of the era. Okay, so yeah, so there's some funny timing on this, and that's something I think about a lot with comics is like the timing and stuff. But it's an interesting dude. Definitely high cheekbones. Okay, cool. So that's got like enough of it. I think I'm gonna do like that. He's gonna be looking out his window. I should have him actually with his mouth open because even though there's no dialogue, it's just which means his lower jaw would be lower. Cool. It's going to be a wobbly cord. He's next to this window. Should definitely make sure it's clear that's a police badge. Like some stuff. Yep. And I have like, oh, button should hold. Okay, so there we go. And then it's going to be, it's at like kind of a weird angle. So you're going to see more of like the office. There's like, let's see. Going to be some cubicle things that you see kind of sitting there. Then I'm going to see like a high door, maybe opposing window. And the glass pane will be kind of here. If this weren't a thumbnail, I would be using so many different techniques. But since it's a thumbnail, that's okay. Okay. Because I think this gets the framing across. So, yeah, dude, like I am feeling pretty good about getting this panel done. It's this funny head trick every time I do comics. And like I said, it's always like one little step further. So, okay. Make sure people know that's glass. I'm gonna put a little a glass kind of thing. Cool. Okay, that'll do. And I think I can do this last panel because this should be really funny. Oh my goodness. And then maybe call it. Ooh. Okay. And there we go. Gonna close this out, scoot this over, and then I'm also going to close this out. Oof. Okay. Well, what am I talking about closing out? Okay. So let's see. And then this should go back to that room. Kind of like a what? There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to basically block this panel out and see how far I can go here. All right. So I'm actually pretty stoked about how this is coming out. I do apologize if today I'm a little off on talking or making conversation. It's a little more like getting down and gritty and just getting the job done here. I will say, like, you know, it is fun to like to push your limits a little bit and see what's possible. And like to me, I'm just pretty pumped about being able to get to the stream. I mentioned I'm doing the 100 days of making comics, and this is day 25, and so I managed to knock that out, which is pretty cool. And I'm almost thinking like, I don't know. I do wonder if I'll regret this tomorrow if I try to do a few more panels. So I don't know. We're gonna have to see. But But I will say this is the mind game of making comics. You always kind of have to fight through self-doubt, push yourself a little bit more. Very similar to like being in a gym, where it's like, I don't know, to me, like my self dialogue at least tends to go a lot like that a lot of the time, where it's like, maybe I can get a little further, maybe a little further. I actually want this to kind of be like, whoa, what? Maybe I'll even do like a what? I was like the sweat bullets in comics. I think those are a pretty cool device too. Um, but man, I have to say too, um, I am really fighting the temptation to like uh, start seeing some of these pages to finish and like getting references and really making like more solid art, because I feel like these roughs are so noodly. It makes me miss being able to finish. But but they serve a purpose, and I think if I stay patient and get these done, it's going to reduce a lot of that later end time. It's like spending more time in previs, and um, now you can actually get a lot done. So here it's going to be back in the apartment. I'm going to give it a little more of a, yeah, because I have like that frame of the door. Draw through, draw through. So at least that'll give it like a little more perspective too. Ceilings there. So yeah, these are like really quick, noodly little pages, but I'm actually pretty stoked. I think this might happen. So anybody who's watching this and is this far in, um, I'm kind of curious, but I am thinking I might just have to finish this whole page because that'll keep me on track. So I will be briefly back. I'm gonna go throw away this can, and then we'll see where it goes. All right, stream's going wild. I'm kidding. It's, I kind of knew it would be a fairly dead stream because it's like a Tuesday at like 1 in the morning. I'm not sure what time it is where you guys are at. Maybe it's a better time, but I do think this will get done. So let's see. Actually, you know what? I am going to get all zoomy on this business. So I don't do cheats like this often. Not that it's cheats. It's just I'm a big subscriber to Chris Ware's uh, kind of insistence on like redrawing and re-inking something, um, just because you can. And so, but on roughs, I'm like basically okay with like sort of using them to make like a subtle difference. Trying to think how I can make this expression. Oh, there we go. Okay. going to make this expression more like kind of a weird one. I might need to change it in a second. I don't know. I kind of like that. Although this eyeball is really wonky, so I need to fix that. Even though it's a rough, it's like I shouldn't have totally wonky eyes. Okay. So that might be the title of the stream too. Like wonky eyes might be what we call this one too. So I'm gonna kind of work it in. Let's get rid of this actually, this whole shadow here. And boom, just a quick patch. I do think like one thing I always try to keep in mind with comics, actually, you know what would help too, like is like subtle movements. I mean, and like really acting out expressions, and that's something you really want to work out as well in the rough stage, so that it's not like entirely um, like stiff or like like there was this habit in web comics in the early 90s where like a comic would like show the exact same frame over and over again with like pretty stiff movements and not a lot of facial expressions, and it's like that's a way to do comics, but it's I don't know, I at least make ambitions of like pushing it a little further than that and bringing some emotion, because it's a memoir and it's a pretty emotional story. And like, if there's a scene like this, it's supposed to be a little bit funny, even though it's dark. um, I want to kind of play up that with the mood, with the poses, with the lighting, and okay. Back to this. Reiterated. All right, so let's see that sequence. How's that panning out? Yeah, I think that works. And then I'm going to do I wonder. What's interesting is like I wasn't really planning on this, but once again, I feel like it needs a beat between this line and then the next, just to kind of create a little bit of timing, a little bit of pacing. And so I actually think this might work. This is me experimenting, but I'm kind of thinking this is just going to be the cop. Actually, I'm just going to cut this. It's funny. I was talking about the Eternal Zoom and Todd McFarlane just kind of as a joke. And now I'm like thinking that might actually be the way to do this, which is hilarious. What funny serendipity. I was like that about art too, where you can be randomly kind of thinking about something, and then actually uh, it's like part of your subconscious working on something. And I think this might actually make for a really good beat. So let's see how this works. I'm going to first merge these guys. Okay. Now let's do some business here. Ba, ba, ba. And I have been using a lot of the 9-panel grid. This is like a Steve Ditko style of storytelling, and especially on there's 2 sequences in this comic that are going to rely really heavily on 9-panel grids, and there's a thought and a reason behind that. I kind of think that like when you're dealing with like a really heavy subject matter like these, this story um, deals with, kind of like a very frightening, kind of tense situation. Um, the other um, story that is told in a similar fashion is about like um, basically like a violent crime and being a victim of violent crime, and it kind of gets into like some pretty brutal stuff, like, and it's slightly violent, and it's not like cartoon violence. It's like, a very factual kind of retelling of how those things went. And I feel like there's something kind of almost journalistic about like a 9-panel grid where it's like I want to the story is heavy enough to where if it's just shown very literally and very like matter of fact, like this happened and this happened and this happened kind of storytelling, it just serves to have a stronger impact in the point in the story that it's at. So um, well, I use really inventive paneling all over the place in different story sections and stuff. It just felt like when I was even scripting this out, like the way to do this is going to be through, you know, through basically um, like doing a very like matter of fact retelling kind of thing. So that's my thinking behind it. Whether it's effective or not will have to kind of remain to be seen. And then once again, some of that will change a little bit from the thumbnail to the final. Um, so anyhow, that's some of the thinking. I just thought I'd share a little bit of that. Just but this is going to add to the humor of that, hopefully. And it's funny because 2 stories, while it's really heavy and it deals with faith and mental illness and like, heavy, like about talked pretty candidly about suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety disorders, stuff like that. It also is laced and filled with a lot of like subtle humor and humor throughout, and kind of hopefully a self awareness. And I have gotten that feedback from people who've read it, that they found it really kind of funny in certain parts. And while it's poignant, it's also like laced with a lot of humor, and I think that makes it more digestible. And once again, that too is like kind of intentional. So just a little bit of a thing here. And I might have actually finished a page. Look at that, with all the self-doubt and whatnot, just using that little method of like, well, maybe a little further, maybe a little further. I know you guys have used that, like, jogging, like that's another trick, right? Or it's like if you're running a race, rather than thinking about the finish line, you just kind of go, well, like let's say it's a race that's like a marathon throughout the city. You're like, well, if I can just get to the end of the block, like we'll do that first. And then you kind of get to the end of the block and you're like, well, maybe one more block, like that's kind of the trick to being productive when you're a slow artist like I am. So, okay, so this has one line. I was stunned. Stunned. Mm-hmm. And if you guys bore with me through this, I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks in retrospect to Corey Kerr, who stopped by for a little bit at the top. I just really appreciate anybody who's been following this channel, supporting my art and stuff like that. And I'm going to post this to my Instagram, so you guys can read it more in full once I am able to kind of close out. So let me, I'll save a JPEG of this and stuff after. So anyhow, for those of you who've tuned into the stream, once again, thank you. If you have time, hit like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell so you can get notifications when this is about to go live. As you can see, there's some nights where this might just appear randomly at like 11 at night. It might appear at like 1 in the morning. It might appear at noon. And so if you want to catch the stream live and participate in the chats and suggest things to talk about, or you have any questions about the process of making comics, or you just want to lurk and watch it, just hit that bell and it'll notify you every time this is about to go live. Also, the biggest ask that I have is, and you might have curiosity about it, check out the first book. Right now I've been working on the second book, but the first book is called Two Stories. It's my graphic novel about faith and mental illness. It's hand lettered, hand inked, and it's a pretty time consuming, laborious, crazy process. This is more what like the finished pages of my work look like. So if you're curious about that and you want to like pick up a great 120 page graphic novel that's a memoir, then please pick that up from Amazon. And that'll do it. I will see you guys on the next stream. Have a good night.